Durag Wisdom, folks, and welcome to Earth Date Y2K 19.01.07. One thing I learned from studying the movies Goodfellas and The Sopranos is that we help enable the sick among us. I'm reminded of the quote from Goodfellas when Henry Hill says that Jimmy Conway even roots for the bad guys in the movies. I believe many of us, including me, have this in common with that character. I mean, when I was watching Bonnie and Clyde, I was rooting for these vicious killers like you wouldn't believe. In real life, they were vicious, vicious killers. Most of us seem to love the bad guys, the ones who stand out and break the rules. I'm reminded of what the character Artie Bucco says of the mobsters who patronize his restaurant, that they bring buzz. At the same time, these creeps that we admire bring destruction and death to whatever they touch. We have a capitalistic society where the idea of stealing money from everyone just to keep the small minority in wealth is as natural as breathing. Watch these pictures again and realize that if it wasn't for the legitimate world, these miscreants would not be enabled. I suppose that we can't help ourselves. For some reason, we are both attracted to and repelled by outlaws and by bullies in general. How else can I understand why 60 million people in our country support an obvious creep? And this creep they support is an obvious sociopath, a criminal. America under the new white rulers has always been a country of gun-loving violence and love-hate relations with outlaws. A place where the so-called strong man has a home. If only we understood just how destructive these people are. And the only time that we learn the lesson is when we ourselves are directly affected by their crime. Imagine being into a loan shark if you are a gambling problem. We must understand what we are dealing with. This is not your usual president. This is something out of the movies. I mean, I'm glad that one of the things I am is, aside from book reading, is movies. I love the movies. I mean, what we're going through now is right out of one of the great suspense films of all time. So I'm trying to think, like, I know movies are an imaginary world, but I'm trying to think, what can we do on our side to defeat this creep, the bad guy, the sociopathic villain? Please read the book, The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump, written by all these psychologists and psychiatrists. And this group analyze the sickness that lies at the heart of this fiend Trump, this racist fiend. They mention that he has narcissistic personality disorder, and they go into a whole thing about what that is. Fascinating stuff, even for a layman. But one essay in particular discusses what I believe the creep really is, aside from the other stuff, a classic sociopath. It came to me as I rewatched Goodfellas and The Sopranos. Everything these mobsters do and everything they say flows right off the lips of Trump. He uses the language of organized crime, and his goal to undermine and destroy our Justice Department is torn from the incidents in these films. He's trying to get rid of this guy in the Justice Department, Bruce Orr. He's like the last of these people that Trump is trying to get rid of, who, according to Rachel Maddow, specializes in investigating the Russian mob. So I can imagine why Trump is trying to get rid of him. Why would the President of the United States want to get rid of anyone, any competent person in his Justice Department, in our Justice Department? We in our country love our guns, and we love our mobsters too. So why not pick one to be our president? A sociopath, unlike a psychopath, does not have underlying psychological obsessions that drive him to murder. A sociopath does not usually hide in plain sight unless he is a successful sociopath like Trump, according to some of the psychologists in that book I mentioned above. A sociopath has no superego in the Freudian sense. They function totally on and by and for their ids. They look at life as a buffet in which they are the only ones allowed to eat. Other people are simply tools to be used and to be murdered if necessary to protect their own interests. There is much to learn about sociopathy and its difference from psychopathy. However, both can overlap, and even more frightening is the fact that each of us has this potential evil buried within our own psyches. And I want to add here, folks, I'm just a lay person. I do not have a college degree in psychology. How do we fight a sociopath who has reached the highest office in our land? What a story. We fight him through understanding, through analysis, through reading, through research, and then through action, not through ignorance. We fight him by learning the rules of the sociopath. Whether they understand it or not, there are certain rules, certain axioms from which they can't escape, even sociopaths, and what they do. We have to learn to fight these creeps like we learn to fight vampires. Learn the rules. Trump is trying to obstruct justice. As a classic sociopath, the fiend will use everything in his evil book to survive. Sociopaths know how to manipulate the clueless others, us. They tap into our love-hate relationship with outlaws and bullies. When we engage with sociopaths, we must do so with the knowledge that we are being used and abused, that the entire reason for being in a sociopath's life is for his own benefit. Too bad Dr. Melfi didn't really learn that until, of course, the final extra season of The Sopranos, when she simply realized, hey, look, this guy's ripping my magazines apart for himself and not letting anybody else read them. Something little like that. No president in our history has ever willingly closed down the federal government. Trump did this on the one hand because he is a racist, terrorist, birther bastard turd who is trying to keep our country white. The other more insidious reason is that Trump knows the Democrats are going to take him down. This guy is a mobster. He's a crooked creep. Otherwise, all of this would have been solved a couple of years ago. He's obstructing justice. Any one of us who runs when we see a police officer would be considered guilty and they would run after us and take us down. What makes him above all of us? Nothing. Robert Mueller is closer than ever before to uncovering his treasonous crimes. Trump, the classic sociopath, has closed our government to distract from the crimes that will put him away for a long, long, long time. This extreme action on his part, and it's not going to stop, and this extreme action is characteristic of a frightened sociopath on the run for his life. Hope it doesn't bring us into a nuclear war. 2 more years of this creep. And there is worse yet to come. Knowing the rules about dealing with a sociopath is understanding the truth.